And welcome to your Unit 7 test review with me, Mr. Bray. So we're going over all the important things for Unit 7, from the Dust Bowl to Hoover and all his crazy policies, to the fear of communism, the United States banning alcohol, women getting the right to vote, the Great Depression, the stock market crash, all crazy things going on in Unit 7. So let us begin. Now, we start off with women finally getting the right to vote. So women get the right to vote in 1920, but it wasn't just like, oh, let's vote in 1920. The fight for the right to vote started in 1848, and it lasted all these years, all these steps women had to go through until the right to vote was ratified. Keep in mind, when we're talking about women getting the right to vote, Wyoming being the first state, even though it was a territory at the time, it would become a state. The first state to give women the right to vote was Wyoming. And the first 5 to 8 states were all Western states. We talked about this before, and we said that women got the right to vote out West first because they did everything that a man could do out West. There wasn't men do this and women do that. It was all hands on deck. So women were getting the right to vote out West way before the whole country, and especially the eastern part of the country, got the right to vote. Another thing to keep in mind here is the very first attempt at an amendment was 1887. So from 1887 all the way to 1920, women tried and um, picketed and had hunger strikes, everything, in order to get it known that they need to be able to vote too. We said if women could work, if women could pay taxes, women should be able to vote. All right. Next up, our next topic is the Dust Bowl, a 5-year span from 35 to 1940, where the middle of our country, basically our breadbasket, okay, our plains, were under a terrible, terrible weather pattern from Nebraska, Kansas, Oklahoma, Texas, this whole area. There was lots and lots of erosion. We talked about this. I know you guys knew this from science classes, the wearing away of land. Some of this was weather, some of this was farmers. Okay, farmers were partly responsible because they were ruining the topsoil. So what happened was they were digging down too deep and ruining the soil. So the soil had no grip. Okay, the plants couldn't grip on to the soil, and that on top of the terrible weather, on top of the wind, just caused terrible conditions for the farmers in the West. All right. Then we bring up prohibition. So the 18th Amendment passes that we are banning the selling and making of alcohol, and it doesn't last. And mainly that's what we're here to talk about. All the years that it was there, the 18th Amendment says that it's illegal. The 21st Amendment undoes the 18th Amendment. There was lots of reasons why prohibition didn't work, but the main ones were the cost of enforcing the laws and all the new crime. People were making alcohol on their own, and it was not safe. Lots of violence came around. So the banning of alcohol just gave way more negative things than positive. As we talked about some of the things in the roaring 20s and how amazing the 20s were, we talked about the Harlem Renaissance. We talked about playwrights, poets, musicians, artists, actors, all living together, okay? And they were talking, communicating, and just getting their ideas out mainly through jazz and dance. These were the two main things that came out of the Harlem Renaissance, people expressing themselves through jazz and dance. Moving on to after the 20s and the Great Depression, we talked about shanty towns, these people living in tent like structures, also known as Hoovervilles, due to our president at the time, Herbert Hoover. Okay, so these shanty towns were popping up because people couldn't afford to live in their houses. The stock market crashed, people lost their jobs. When people lost their jobs, they lost their cars, they lost their homes, they had nowhere to go. Millions of people were living in tents all throughout the United States during the Great Depression. All right. Now, before we got to the Great Depression, when World War I ended, there was this Red Scare. Okay, we were afraid that communism was going to take over the United States because we saw it happening in other countries. Mitchell Palmer took advantage of our fears of communism and started arresting people. Over 5,000 people were arrested. He had no idea whether they were communists or not, but he knew he could take advantage of the United States people because we were so afraid of communism. We were afraid that we saw communism in these other places. We didn't want it here. Okay, we were afraid that communism would come to the United States. Now, towards the end of our unit, we have Hoover, who's our president during the Great Depression, and he's just not understanding. That's the title here. He did not understand. He kept going on that the lesson should be consistently enforced that though people support the government should not support the people. He did not want to lend a helping hand. He wanted people to work harder. That's what he thought the solution was. He thought if people just worked harder, everything would be fine. As we know, what was going on in the Depression, we needed help. We needed something. And he just did not. He did not believe the power and duty of the general government ought to be extended to the individual suffering. And that blank screen means we are finished. So thank you so much. It was great getting our review in. Please watch this before you take your Unit 7 test. I kind of hit on all the main points that you're going to see. And good luck. I think you guys will do just wonderful. All right, take care. Bye-bye.